Greetings, my developers. I hope all is well. I'm here to talk about the new Visual Studio version, which is 2022. So it is officially out. It's been in preview for a while now, and Microsoft in fine style has been refining it based on feedback from the developer community, fixing bugs and tightening it up. And I must say, I'm using it now, and it is an upgrade from 2019. So in this video, we're going to go through the process to install it on your computer, and we'll just do like a general overview and review of the new features. So let's start this journey by going to visualstudio.microsoft.com/launch. Maybe at the time you're watching this video, that /launch would be gone, but you do have the option to download in community, professional, or enterprise. So professional and enterprise, of course, if you're in an organization or if you're, an individual who is putting up proprietary software. But for now, we can just proceed with the community. So what this will do is give you that installer that you're probably already familiar with from previous versions. And that installer, once run, will give you the option to select the workloads. Now, I already have it installed, but what you're probably going to see is a screen looking more like this when I click modify, and it will ask you which workloads you want. So it's the same installation procedure if you're used to 2019. If not, then that's fine. You just go ahead and select the workload based on what you think your development tasks will be. So generally speaking, I do more web, Azure, Node.js, and .NET development, desktop development stuff. If you're into mobile development, you're looking into UWP, C++, etc., you can go ahead and select as many workloads as you need. And of course, that space will increase with each selection. Now, if you're following along, you can go ahead and install and pause this video because that might take a while. However, when you resume, you can come back here and then you can run Visual Studio for the first time. So I'm going to open it on my machine, and the first thing I'm going to notice or take note of is the different logos. So it looks a little lighter. I prefer the kind of dark logo that Visual Studio 2019 has. I mean, you can see I'm a dark mode kind of guy. The interface is a bit bigger, so this screen is a bit bigger, but it is the same landing page design, barring the softer edges and the bolder text. I think I like the font on this a bit more, but generally speaking, it's the same thing that we're used to, right? So if I go ahead and create a new project, let's say I'm just going to keep it simple and do a new console app, C# console app, and then this is just going to be VS 2022 demo. All right, go ahead, hit next. So you see it's the same thing, but here I can choose which framework, and I can now choose the latest .NET 6. So .NET 5 was released last year and it's the current one. .NET 3.1 still has long-term support, so it's still quite capable, and each one is actually backwards compatible. So 5, most of what you do in 3, most if not all of what you do in 3.1 is still compatible with 5, and most if not all of what you would have done with these two can be forwarded to .NET 6. .NET 2.1, it's out of support, so I would suggest if you have any apps still in 2.1 that you start looking to update them, or at least if you're just learning .NET Core, don't start with 2.1. So when we go ahead and hit create, another thing I take note of, so I paused the video. It wasn't really that quick, but I paused the video. But one thing I took note of is the fact that it is much faster. So that is probably because it is now a 64-bit application. So it's making better use of your 64-bit machine's resources than previous versions would have. So now you're going to see faster search times, faster project load times. You have solutions with 10.9 projects. It shouldn't take as long to load them up. So another thing that I'm going to point out is that this is a console app, and if you have any experience writing a typical C# application, you will know that there is a standard template where you have a bunch of using statements at the top, and then you have int main, you have a class, and then you have int main, and then you have the code in there. But here, all I'm seeing is the code. So this is .NET 6. .NET 6 actually got rid of that whole template. So let me just add a .NET 5 console app project quickly. Let me just call this one demo. .NET 5, so we know. Next, and then this one is .NET 5. So that is what we're probably accustomed to when we look at a .NET 5 project or .NET 5 console project or code file. So you have your class, you have your static void made, and then you have your code. However, in .NET 6, they got rid of the wrappers around all of that, and you just start writing code, right? So this is not a C sharp tutorial. I'm just pointing out little nuances. In my C sharp tutorial, I will definitely go through all of that and the differences between .NET regular .NET C sharp and what .NET 6 brings to the table. But it's really cool as far as I see. Now, another cool feature to me is its increased intelligence when it comes to code hinting or hinting what you might be getting at while you're writing your code. So I can see this as a huge productivity win. They dubbed the feature IntelliCode, and you'll see that little icon down here that allows you to kind of toggle some of the options. So if I type console, you see that it's kind of auto completing dot right line. It's not waiting for me to, go into the list and then select it. I can just press tab and then tab. As long as there are gray characters to the right of the cursor, I can press tab and then it will just fill them in, right? I am here. So let me try something else. If I do something like var num1 is equal to, and then see it's suggesting that I probably want to initialize it to 0. Right? Let me see if it's really that intelligent. Okay, it's suggesting num2. What if I wanted var name? What would it suggest? Var name, and then I say space, and then okay. So I guess I broke it, but you can see what it's getting at, maybe. All right, so I guess var name is vague because you need the type for it to know what exactly um what kind of variable it's going to be before you give the value. So if I said string name 1, let's see what it would suggest. String name 1, no suggestions. All right, so that's a feature, I guess, that over time it will increase in its offering, because this is really based on code completions based on other code samples from various repositories all over the place. So I guess random variable names like this are rarely used, which is probably why it's having such a hard time understanding what I might be getting at. But then you can see with the num1, num2, it figured it out. All right, so I just press enter, it's suggesting console.writeLine tab, and then it's going to suggest num1 tab. So right there, I just printed num1 without writing a code, a line of code. And look at this, I press tab once and I'm printing line num2. So I think, as you use it, it will seem easier. It will make better suggestions. It's clearly contextual because it knows that num1 and num2 are in the document or in the program. So it knows that it can suggest it later down for my operations. All right. So another thing that I want to point out are some of the new features that came with .NET 6 Visual Studio 2022 and Blazor. A lot of what I'm about to show you also applies to like XAML development, MAUI development, live previews, hot reloads, all of those wonderful things. So I'm just going to add another project. This time it's going to be a Blazor WebAssembly. Go to next, and I'm calling this one VS 2022 demo Blazor app. We'll just leave that. Go ahead, hit next, and we want the .NET 6. So you see you have 5, you have 6, and I won't choose any of the other features. I'll just go ahead and hit create. So if you're not familiar with Blazor, then you can get up to speed with Blazor through my course, Modern Web Development with Blazor, or my other one, ASP.NET Core API and Blazor Development. So either one of those courses can get you up to speed with what Blazor is and how it's used. But for now, I just want to get through what is new. So one key feature that they've introduced that in the past, well, firstly, one improvement would be with the hinting of the tags, right? Because Blazor is a mix of razor tags versus regular HTML tags. What was sort of annoying was the fact that every time you started typing a tag, you would only see HTML tags. But now they're actually kind of blending in more of those razor tags, and you can actually filter. So you can say show only the tag helpers, and you can get those tags exclusively displayed to you, when you need them. So that is a really good improvement. I must applaud them for that. That will make Blazor development much more seamless and efficient. Another thing that they've done to improve efficiency is they've introduced the ability to add a component on the fly. So what you're seeing here is an index component. Each one dot razor is a component, and then here you're seeing survey prompt. So survey prompt is actually a component which is found in the shared folder. So I can reference a component from another component. Now, what would have to happen is that survey prompt has to exist. Otherwise, I would be getting an error in this line until that component is created. So if I do something like new component and then just close it, it would, of course, give me an error. But now it's giving me a suggestion that says, would you like to create the component from a tag, from the tag? So if I do that, then sure enough, you'll see that new component get created. There it is, new component, right? And sure enough, the editor picks it up and everything is good to go, right? So that is a nice, easy way now to just make your components on the fly. Another thing that they've introduced is hot reload, which is depicted by the fireball up here. So I'm going to set this as my startup project, and I'm going to run it in debug mode. All right, so our Blazor app is up, and this is that survey component that we were talking about. New component would be somewhere under here, but new component doesn't have anything in it. So what if I took this H1 tag, went over to new component? It would be so cool if I could just like control click and jump over to the component, or do like a go to component. So that's probably something they can look into. But for now, let's just jump over to new component, put in our tag. So let's say we're doing live editing, we're testing the interface, we want to see the changes, and then I can hit hot reload and then refresh the page, and I see no change. So they introduced the feature, but I think it still needs some work. So they actually had been kind of phasing it in from 2019. I guess that was practice for the release of 2022. And I had seen that there was some controversy because they were second guessing, should we release it or not? And well, based on what I'm seeing here, I'm not impressed. So I must say that. But at least the thought is there. It would be really cool if it just worked. So just to prove that it should work, I'm going to restart the app, and there's our hello world, right? So it's not my code. The feature didn't work. So you can let me know how you feel about that in the comments. Now, another cool refactoring feature that they've added is the ability to just abstract your block of code into a code behind file. So generally speaking, a Razor component has a mixture of the HTML, the Razor tags, and a code block where you would write your C# code. So the thing is that as your file grows, you would want to split the C# from the markup. And the ideal way to do that would be to create a code behind file that has the same name as the component.razor.cs. That will get nested underneath. Now that can be a tedious process, so they've given us an option where I can just do control dot, get that refactoring suggestion to just move the code block to the code behind. And then that actually gives me a brand new file with the correct naming convention, and it is now showing me all the code that I had, right? So it automatically creates a partial class. Another nice touch to the editor, it's this, I think it's called the inheritance margin. So I actually have used that in Visual Studio 2019. It was flagged as experimental and it worked pretty well, but I think it's really cool here. So it actually shows you what is being inherited from what. So here you see that this is inheriting component base. And if you have like an interface and something inheriting from the interface, it can be tedious jumping between the declaration of the method and the implementation. So the inheritance margin makes it easy for you to just jump between the method you're looking at and what is being inherited from. That's a So see, it just jumped over to the code base, but that's fine. We don't need that, right? So those are cool little features that have been added to increase your productivity and throughput as a developer. So let me demonstrate the inheritance margin a bit more. So I'm going to create two files. I'm going to create a new class. So let me say public class test class, and this is going to inherit from iTest class. And control dot, I think the refactorings have been very, very, very on point in recent times. Generate type, and they're even telling me that yes, based on naming convention, it looks like it should be an inheritance. Create it in a new file. There it is. And then I can just say, okay, please put the test class itself in its own class, in its own file, right? So when I jump over to iTest class, let's see what suggestions this has for me. All right, maybe none yet. So let me start putting in stuff. Age, and then okay, name, sure. What else do you have for me? Nothing. All right, then let me create a method. So public void test method, right? So that is my interface. Let me see what this is. And you can change the namespace. So if I do the namespace, you see that it wraps it in the namespace code. And another thing that .NET 6 brings with the new C# version is that I don't have to have the curly braces. So I took out the curly braces for the namespace and just put namespace, the name, semicolon, so the whole file knows it's in that namespace. So that's pretty cool also. So now that I have the test class, when I want to go to what is inheriting from it, I just use my inheritance margin. So it's kind of tiny because my monitor is a bit big and I'm trying to scale, but it's not really working out. But then you can see the inheritance margin at work. So I can just jump over to test class because it knows that it's inheriting from iTest class. And then, of course, I need to implement the interface accordingly, right? So that's what that brings. And then if I'm dealing with this and I want to jump back, I can always use the margin. Or if I want to go to the declaration for anything that is being inherited, I can always do that and jump between them. So I think that's a really nice touch. Now, one more thing I want to show you that I think could be quite useful. You know, everybody wants to feel comfortable in their workspace. Some people like dark mode. I have a colleague who hates dark mode. He prefers lighter themes. Everybody has their own preferences. So I actually had found a list of new themes that were designed for 2022, right? So you have winter is coming, you have cyberpunk. So you can actually just look through these to see if you like any of these, and you can pick, choose, and refuse your themes as you wish. So you have a few more themes that you can apply to your Visual Studio to make your environment a bit more friendly towards your preferences. So, like I said, this was just a quick introduction, like a first view. There are many more features, I guess, that are hidden, and you'll probably just stumble upon them. If you're a new user, you probably won't appreciate the introduction of some of the new features as much as somebody who has been using Visual Studio for years would. But nonetheless, it's a great, very powerful tool as far as I'm seeing. It's very snappy, which I can appreciate. All of these little additions are really nice. There are many other features like I said, the .NET MAUI that ships with .NET 6, and it allows you to build rich cross-platform applications. It brings like that whole forms design to a whole new level. You have other productivity features like more control over the breakpoints, you know, the frequency with which you hit a breakpoint, or live previews in web development with ASP.NET and with XAML. We just saw Blazor. I guess that's still under development and under improvement. As you know all too well, every time we get an update for something, it's because they're fixing something else, right? I have seen that they have introduced a one-click publish the Azure DevOps. So first it was a one-click publish to GitHub, and then you had to go through additional steps to repeat that with Azure DevOps. Now they've given GitHub and Azure DevOps parity in terms of that much tooling. And in conclusion, I think it's really good. It's a good upgrade, and it's good to get started with. So with all that said and done, go ahead and do the upgrade if you feel the need to. If you don't see it as worth it, then no problem. Let me know how you feel about .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022 in the comments below. I'm sure you have a lot of feedback and I'd love to hear it.